Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now in our 18th year, I interview writers about their craft and their future, their past, how they got inspired. The writers are usually poets, sometimes novelists or journalists. We even interview non-writers, other kinds of artists. We've had painters, we've had sculptors, photographers. We cast a pretty wide net. So if you have ideas for artists who might appear on the show, any kind of muralist, sculptor, anybody, watch for our address at the end of the program and send that idea in. I also want to remind you that past episodes of the Writer's Block are available at Sawyer Library. You can go in and take out an old show as you would a book and watch it at home, and then don't forget to bring it back. Now tonight, we're going to have a little bit of a different show. I'm actually going to interview myself. That's a little bit of a trick that I've pulled 2 or 3 times over the last 18 years when I actually had written something or produced some form of art, and I thought, well, it's a writer's show. I'll talk to myself for a half hour. So indulge me if you would, because I'm not going to switch chairs and run back and forth and ask questions. I'm just going to explain the project. The project that I'm interviewing myself about is actually a movie which I wrote and researched and produced with the help of my wife, Sandy. The movie is called Women in American Horse Racing. And as I do on all these shows, I'm going to hold it up. It's available on Amazon, or you can catch me anytime, and I'll sell you one for $15. Women in American Horse Racing. It has a lot of local connections. Barbara Ader, one of the very early women jockeys in this country, who's mentioned in the program, is from New England, and her daughter, Joreen White, lives in Rockport. A well-known turf rider and a wonderful man, a retired colonel by the name of Peter Foss, a friend of mine, was a great help in the research for women in American horse racing. And there are other local connections in Cape Ann and in Boston. We talk about, in the movie, the first all-women's race ever, which was run in 1969 at Suffolk Downs. It was organized by the then president, the great promoter, Bill Veeck. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, women in American horse racing, and we're going to see a couple segments from it later in the show. If you want to see the whole program, you can visit the library October 25th this fall, and I and Sandy are going to be there showing it and answering questions. A little bit of background on this. This was produced by myself and my wife, Sandy, as I mentioned, under the auspices of American Storyboard. That is this company. This is a nonprofit which we formed some years ago. It's a 501c3. And the idea behind this nonprofit company is to produce educational videos that wouldn't be produced otherwise because they're not commercially viable. Big studios or television stations wouldn't go after them. The first production was Gloucester's Adventure, an American Story, which ran on this station and also GBH and GBX in Boston. This is the second big production. I want to mention the other officers and board members on this company, American Storyboard. My wife Sandra and I are officers, as also is Mark Young, a longtime friend and our in-house lawyer. The board members are Gordon Massingham, who has his own film company in Martha's Vineyard, Arthur Ryan, a local gentleman who's been really supportive over the years and whose background is in film. He had an illustrious career on the West Coast before he came home to God's country again. Jan Bell, the best connected lady in the city, who's been good enough to support these projects over the years. And also a gentleman by the name of John Green, who's actually from Chicago, someone I've known for many years, who's interested in film and horses. We're going to see a couple segments, but before we run the first one, I just want to say something personal. I have always been interested, because I've taught at North Shore Community College, in women in the workplace issues. And this movie combines another interest, which is horse racing. I've always been interested in horse racing. When I was a lot younger, in my teens and early 20s, I used to spend a lot of time at Arlington Park and Sportsman's Park and Hawthorne in Chicago when I was supposed to be studying. But I learned enough at the track to make up for what I missed at the university classrooms. So that's just a little bit of background, and I want to use that as an introduction to the first segment of the movie. We're going to see the first about 6 minutes to give you a feel for the movie, an idea of the women who were interviewed, who work in horse racing, and just a taste of the tone that we try to set. So here is that first segment right now. The story of women in racing is more and more the story of racing itself. Past and present, women have always been fans. There's also a long tradition of women as both breeders and owners. Mrs. Payne Whitney's Green Tree Stable and Isabel Sloane's Brookmead were legends in their time. In 1942, 7 of the first 8 finishers in the Kentucky Derby, including the winner, Shutout, were owned by women. It wasn't until the liberation movement of the 1960s that women started to make real strides in all of racing. Today, as jockeys and grooms, outriders, trainers and vets, from the backstretch to the boardroom, women have become a powerful, positive force in horse racing. Of course, some things have stayed the same. Women are still big fans, women of all ages. They bring a special joy and energy to the sport of kings and queens.
I'm Jennifer Young, and I'm an assistant racehorse trainer. This is the very best job in the world. I get up around 4:30. I look at all my horses' legs, check to see they're okay, make sure the staff is doing well, discuss with the staff what's going to happen for the day, make up a list of what horses will be doing what for their training. My position is a little unique in that I also ride all my own horses in addition to train them, so I gallop and train all my horses. Well, I've been in Massachusetts with the show horses. I've been in New Hampshire with the show horses. I was in Colorado working at rodeo in Denver. I've been at the racetracks at New York, upstate New York, Delaware, South Carolina, some steeplechasing racing, and also Florida. I grew up around horses, showing horses, had horses in my backyard. I have eat, breathed, and slept horses all my life. I had always been interested in the race horses, so I came to the track and gave it a shot. I started as a hot walker, cooling out the horses and just learning from the bottom up.
Jenny Young and other women trainers stand on the shoulders of Mary Hirsch, the first woman to break into the rough and tumble world of horse training back in 1934. Mary saddled an entry in the Kentucky Derby of 1937, a horse named No Sir.
It's a wonderful job. It's a tough life, but a wonderful life. Training racehorses is the best job in the world.
Rubbing horses can be great too.
I love this job. I've worked around the racetrack since I graduated from high school. I love being outdoors and working with the people and the horses, and it's a great, exciting job. what we do in the morning is we clean the buckets and the stalls and get the horses ready to go to the track. And our rider comes in, which is Jenny, and we gallop the horses. Actually, she does. And our hot walkers cool them out, and then we put on bandages at the end of training and massage the horses. I just overall love everything about it. It's great.
Outriders are a combination of lifeguard and safety officer at the racetrack, a job that provides real satisfaction.
You have people's lives in your hands. Their lives, the horses' lives, and when you actually physically save someone's life, it's kind of adrenaline high. I started showing horses and rodeoing and found out you could make money working with the horses. So that's kind of good. It beats going to an office every day.
Other women see the track from a completely different angle.
My name is Susan Walsh. I live in North Andover, Massachusetts. We have an office in the grandstand. We deal with all kinds of issues that arise from anyone that's licensed. We do scratches for the afternoon. We review disciplinary issues. And then we go down to the jocks room and we have films of the previous day's racing. We review those. Then for the afternoon, we go up to the top of the grandstand and we oversee all the races. And we make them official. This is absolutely the best job in the world.
My job is to check the horses in the morning that are going to be running in the afternoon, make sure that they're fit to race. I get here around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I have a list of horses that are running in the afternoon, and I go from barn to barn checking each horse. We have them jog before us, and we do any other kind of a lameness exam that we think is necessary. Usually jogging is enough. We look at x-rays, if there are any recent x-rays on the horses, if we think it's necessary. The horses that pass inspection will run in the afternoon. During the races, I'm here to assist any horses that might get injured or need medication. I'm addicted to the racetrack, really. These horses are so beautiful. A thoroughbred racehorse, I think, is the most beautiful creature on earth.
That's the first 6 minutes of women in American horse racing, and that should give you a little sense of how the film works and that it's based on interviews. We'll see another segment, in fact, the conclusion of the movie, jumping through the body of it in just a minute. I wanted to give you a couple more technical details. The editor was Bob McGlinchey, who worked here at Channel 12 for many years and now freelance edits and freelance directs and does other work in the film industry in and around Boston. My wife Sandy did the interviews. She established a real nice rapport with the different women that she talked to during our principal photography. And I wanted to also mention that although we had a workable budget for the movie, we couldn't afford to fly in our private plane. The American Storyboard plane is in the hangar being worked on right now. We couldn't afford to go to places like the West Coast to do interviews or to shoot, so that we asked different people out there for footage to donate. And Santa Anita, the famous racetrack in Southern California, was very, very kind and sent us some beautiful footage. For instance, in the segment you just saw, there was a very nice shot of a horse in the morning, and you could see the horse's breath shooting out from his nostrils, gray against a darker background. That is from Santa Anita. Beautiful, beautiful shot. The next shot that cut goes to is a shot of Jenny Young working out a horse, and that is on the track at Suffolk Downs. So we mixed the donated footage with the footage that we shot, and without explaining, of course, in the film that these were different locations. That's the magic of film. We wanted to emphasize that these were real women working at gaining their livelihood and real occupations, and we wanted to stay away from, the ladies with the big hats and the box seats that you see at Churchill Downs every May. This is about real working women and in a real industry. Although you can see why they're in it, because the horses are, as the vet says, so beautiful. And that's what drew me to horse racing many years ago, and continues to draw them. I think you'll agree from that shot of the horse going by in slow motion, another Santa Anita shot, that horses may be, as the vet says, the most beautiful creatures on earth. We're going to go to the conclusion of the show now, that emphasizes how these women, when they were young, got involved in racing, and then go right straight through to the credits. So here's the second section of Women in American Horse Racing.
My name is Allison Lancey, and I love horses. Well, my dad's a jockey, my mom was a trainer, and I do a couple of stalls, and sometimes I ride them.
Well, actually, I loved horses since I was real small.
I got into racing when I was about 16 years old.
Since I was like 6 years old.
So imagine me a 5-year-old. For some of you that know me really well, it's probably easier for you, and the other ones that don't, you can use your imaginations. I was 5 years old, and I spent the whole summer, which when you're 5 seems like a lifetime, with my little pony, Stony Baloney, the Wonder Pony. I think in those days, when I was that age, riding around in the hills in Eau Claire and with my friends, little did I know then that I knew what the sport of kings was made of. There we were, a bunch of renegade kids risking life and limb, hell-bent for leather, up hills, elbows flying, legs kicking, around hills, ripping around corners, wind whisking by, vroom, 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 all our ponies' feet going like that together, and all for those precious bragging rights of, ha, I won, I beat you. That's when I think I realized what racing was all about. And I think there's thousands of kids all over the world right now with backyard ponies in England, Europe, Japan, everywhere in the world that know what racing is about.
When I was a girl and riding a lot, my mother, bless her, and my dad, they thought loving horses would be a safe, temporary distraction from falling in love with boys. I'd grow out of it, of course, with marriage, mortgage, kids. Well, that was a long time ago, and now I'm getting involved with horses again. What I learned was the boyfriends, a husband, kids, everything was a distraction from horses.
I want to stay in the racing because I really, really just like the sport, and the way it feels when you're on a horse makes me feel tall.
Bring him in. That's him. Bring him in, man. Bring him in. Good luck, kid. Bring him in. Hey, bring him in.
Racing is open to women as never before.
The opportunities are many. There's so many jobs on the backside of a track, from the people that work with the horses to vendors, blacksmiths, veterinarians, assistant veterinarians. There's people that work up in the grandstands, on the tow boards, on the windows.
In the United States, almost 1 million horses are involved in racing, and each horse has to be trained, groomed, fed, and ridden. Not to mention the human crowds. Every rail bird at the track needs tender, loving care, too.
I'm betting 8-5 on Dixie Boy.
There's so many different aspects of the racing industry. I would encourage young women or girls that are interested in this field to go for it.
If you want to do it, that's good, but get an education first. Get a college education first, so when you get tired, you have something to fall back on. Let's go!
Women have arrived in American horse racing from coast to coast. bringing a new energy and fresh perspective to the industry. They've won their spurs with talent and hard work, and something more: heart, compassion, a real love for the game, a real love for the horse. It hasn't always been an easy trip, but women have come a long way, from obscurity to the winner's circle, from the back barns to the Hall of Fame. We haven't time to mention all the women in racing: tellers, owners, announcers, or the young woman who rings post-time warnings at Saratoga. We do want to mention our bugler, Bonnie Brown, who introduces the horses at Arlington Park. So that was the concluding segment in the movie. You didn't see today most of the movie. All the middle we blacked out and condensed and put it on the editing room floor for this program, just to give you a flavor with the two sections of the beginning and the end, and how the interviews went, and how the tone of the movie was expressed. Because this is the writer's block, I'd like to say a couple things about the writing of a script for a show like this. It's very much different than poetry or journalism, although in poetry and journalism you have to be very, very succinct and clean, of course, and which reminds me of the old journalism line: I would have made it shorter, but I didn't have time. Brevity and clarity and shortness are a premium in all good writing, as it is in script writing. But in script writing, you have to keep in mind always that the writing really, because cinema is a movie art and the visuals and the motion are supposed to tell the main story, that the writing is secondary. It has to back up what we're seeing, but it can't try to tell you the story. The image on the screen should tell you the story. And that's difficult to remember because, like all writers, I tend to get in love with my lines, and it's hard for someone to say, or for me to say later, looking at a script for review, that paragraph has to go, that line has to go, that whole page has to go. We can replace that with this image, we'll cut it to the second image. The writing is secondary, and that's the biggest lesson to learn when you're writing for a visual medium. Although I like writing in all modes, so it was fun. This documentary is an educational documentary, and it's running right now on PBS stations in Kentucky, I'm proud to say, and Sandy's proud to say that too. The PBS stations in Kentucky run, as you can imagine, more videos on horse racing and horses and people in the industry than pretty much any other state in the country. As far as horses are concerned, Kentucky is much, much more advanced than we are. There must be more spiritual people down there than we are up here in Massachusetts. So we're very proud that this is on PBS in Kentucky. Not exactly this night, but during October, and it will continue. So it's been well received down there. I want to mention also a piece that was in the Thoroughbred Times. Now, the Thoroughbred Times, if you don't subscribe, is a is a weekly journal that's kind of the weekly Bible of the racing industry. And they were good enough to do a piece about our documentary last June when it actually premiered. It premiered in June of '07. And I'm going to read just a couple quick excerpts from this because I just got the 5-minute sign from Andrew Love, the very capable director here. The interviews in the program are with current jockeys, stewards, veterinarians, executives, and others who show how women are shaping the horse industry today. American Storyboard also worked with the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame to put together segments on influential women of the past, such as trainer Mary Hirsch and Hall of Fame jockey Julie Crone. In the movie you saw Julie Crone, images supplied to us by Julie and her husband, Jay Hovde. You saw an image also that was supposed to be Mary Hirsch, but we didn't actually have a picture of Mary Hirsch, so we did a little docudrama, and we borrowed a car from Tom Webster in Magnolia, the old Ford, and we talked a niece of mine, Jessica Bryan, into putting on some old 1930s clothing, and she posed in front of the car and magically became Mary Hirsch. Although the documentary is largely positive about women in racing, it does point out some obstacles women have faced and continue to face in the industry. The racing industry is no different than many other industries in America. It's tough for women. They have to perform better to get up the ladder and even get to the same place where men are and get the same recognition and the same kind of pay. There have been 1,691 horses in the Kentucky Derby. 1,691. 6 of those horses were ridden by women. So you tell me if you think there might be a glass ceiling there. That's quite a statistic. I think it's 0.003 of the horses have been ridden by women. Certainly there are more capable riders out there than 0.003%. Thanks for being with me on the Writer's Block tonight. I hope you've learned something about how to write and create for a visual medium. It's a little different this evening, but I thought I could interview myself once every few years. If you have learned something about the medium and something about this documentary, Women in American Horse Racing, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.